All right, what is going on, everybody? We're back. Babs here. We're going to be doing Talk-Thru, and this is St. Andrew's front nine heavy winds. So what we're looking for here in playing heavy winds is you have to understand and keep in mind what is the green doing. So what our green is doing here is, oh Lord, that is a horrible drawing. All right, let's try that again. So the green has a high side here, and everything kind of funnels this way, away from the flag. But when you're understanding what heavy winds are doing, like so, the ball is going to spin in the direction of the wind. So not only is the landing spot important, but where the ball is going to go afterwards is equally as important. So keep that in mind when you're playing heavy winds, that don't just focus on, oh, I didn't get my landing spot right. You need to know what the ball is going to have a tendency to do once it lands. So that's why you'll see here I pick a lower flying shot and I add topspin to keep the ball from ripping backwards too much. So as you can see, the ball moved to the left, but because I added topspin, it also moved forward, and I kept it from spinning too much. So that is something that you'll want to work on, practice with. Understand that, again, landing spot is just as important, and making sure that where your ball ends up needs to be equally as important. So here we have a pretty brutal headwind, and as I've done in a previous video, days ago, maybe weeks ago, it involved this green here, and understanding what the shape of the green is doing. I'm just going to quickly draw it again. This is all high side, and the green all goes this way. But as you've seen, we have a pretty wicked headwind, and we have very slow green, so I can't play that strategy where the ball lands here and rolls down. It's just not going to do that. The greens are too slow and the wind is too strong. So this is a situation where you need to be at the hole or past it. So things like that will dictate how your shot strategy changes. Obviously, the strong wind is going to have a dictation, but then also where you're going to land has a dictation. So I had to change my approach strategy. And had to put it right on the button. And we got a pretty good shot there. Here we are again, another brutal headwind, but don't let that discourage you. There are ways to get around this, and one of those ways is a punch shot. So what you'll see here me do is and you'll understand that what happens here is no matter what you're looking at wind-wise, the ball is going to move. Especially on St. Andrews, there's really no such thing as a direct headwind, especially if you don't hit the ding line. There's going to be some offset to what the ball is going to do, and especially if you're using a ball like the Titleist 87, what I'm using. So prepare for that. Obviously that looks like it's not far off of direct headwind, but what happens if you miss ding on the wrong side? Now your ball ends up way over here. So prepare for the worst, and you'll see I just move it slightly over. And then I'm going to set my spin, and I'm going to choose a punch shot. Got a slight miss ding, but the ball still moves slightly over. So I aimed right here, and it pretty much stayed on line because that wasn't a dead headwind. again, if you guys aren't familiar with your punch shots, get out there, chart them, get familiar. They're a really, really big help in heavy winds. This here just got a really good bounce, but didn't want to put any spin on the drive so that I wouldn't have too much wind effect and let the fairway do its job. In which case, it put me in a good position to hit a sand wedge, add some backspin just so that the tailwind doesn't kick it forward, and land it short. So again, as you can see, that ball went from left to right when it landed, and that's the direction that the wind is blowing. Eight green, so we're not going to mess around with the putting too much. So here we got, obviously, a brutal headwind, and some people would be like, oh wow, this is going to put me in trouble for my approach, but there's ways to work around that. And here I missed it. I actually dinged it, but as you can see, it's not a direct headwind, it's a right to left wind. So I rolled off to the side. 47, nothing crazy. Again, if we were to calculate this shot, and this is something that I kind of want to, work through here with y'all. So 47, say that's, 1 foot up, 30 mile an hour dead headwind. And to the hole, I'm getting roughly 55 yards. But you have to understand that in this scenario, with this headwind, the ball here is not necessarily just going to go straight up and over. With this headwind, the ball is actually going to increase its apex and go up like this and down. So the game itself is all about perception. It's not going to perceive you as hitting, a shot that's 55 yards because I'm using a high spin ball. So you could give it an input and then a command, and the game will perceive that input and translate it however it wants. So what you're going to see me do is I'm not going to hit this for 55 yards. I want to hit this harder than 55 yards to take into account any extra variance that the game will incur. So I added 3 yards, and I still came up 2 yards short. And that's the thing about heavy winds, that's the thing about wedges and high spin balls, is just because the number is calculated doesn't mean that's the correct number. Here, nothing crazy. Again, just being mindful and also being aware that this green, it looks flat, but it's not. There's basically a ridge here that's uphill, and everything kind of moves in this direction. So kind of like number 2, it's not as steep, but you want your ball to be behind the flag as best as possible when you're shooting into this hole. So with this wind, I thought about punching, but I didn't punch because I didn't want the lower flying ball to hit that ridge and then skip forward. So I chose a full shot. Unfortunately, I didn't add enough yardage, and I got caught up behind the hole. So luckily it's only roughly 8 greens. Not a whole lot of movement happening here, but still taking into account the wind is fairly strong. The dots are moving pretty consistently. Just make a good read on it. We're good to go. Some people in a tailwind like to go over this bunker and try and shortcut, through to the green here. I've seen it oftentimes. People try and come shortcut through here. I've also seen it where it skips across the green and goes in the brush over here. So, you know, understanding what your risk reward is. Keep in mind that sometimes the risk isn't always worth the reward. But in the long run, keep yourself safe. Understand what your shots are going to do. And in this case, we're looking at a ridge that runs right here and a ridge that runs right here. So all of our shots, all of the ball, if we're on faster greens, moves in this manner like so. So a headwind here, it's a pretty good wind. We can hold the ball up. And we just want to make sure that our aim is consistent. And we want to be on the correct side of the flag if possible. So aim was on point, got the roll, good shot. If it was faster greens, who knows? Maybe that would have gone in. All right, number 8, wicked tailwind. But again, keeping in mind that, you know, just because that barely looks like it's an offset tailwind, this 207 yards is going to make it a pretty substantial tailwind. So I can't really zoom in here, but I can try to show you that before the flag, there's a ridge, and that's what makes this shot kind of difficult. Luckily, we have slow greens. But the ridge sends the ball forward like this. So if you're on faster greens and you were to land this ball somewhere too short, it will kick forward. And I've seen it actually roll off the green. But luckily, we have slower greens, so our game plan is still the same. Land it on top, if not a little bit past that ridge. And hope that the ball holds up. And as you can see, I'm aiming, you know, what is that? Roughly 4 grids for a tailwind that, you know, looks like it's barely offset. But that's the thing about strong tailwinds and the distance you're having to cover, is you have to account for how much the ball has to travel in order to get to the flag. So we got the shot, landed a little long, but we're behind the flag, and that's what we want. So as you can see, there's a lot of dot movement in front of the flag, but behind the flag, there isn't a whole lot. Consistent putt. We got it to fall. Here we didn't have a whole lot of tailwind, so we weren't able to reach the green in 2, but there are often times where you can reach the green in 2 if you get a substantial tailwind. Now here you'll see, this is usually a good opportunity for a punch, but instead I'm going to choose for a pitch because in the long run, the punch is lower flying, and with this wind, I don't want this ball, per se, to come out of here, hit the green, and then skip forward away from the flag. And that'll usually happen in faster greens, but, you know, with this wind, you never know what it'll dictate, what might happen. So I chose a pitch, which is full backspin, and it's much easier to control than a punch that may have too much power. So it landed 19 and it released 4 yards. And, you know, that's not terrible. We got an 8-foot putt, but it beats being behind the flag, accidentally making a mistake, getting your percentage wrong, and punching too hard on a full shot. And so we ended up with a solid 9 under for heavy winds. Only 6 dings. So again, as always, you don't have to ding to be able to shoot scores like this. You just have to understand what your course management is and how to consistently get the ball in a position where it'll give you the best chance for making birdies. So hope you guys like this video. As always, let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see y'all soon. Take care.